Hi, everyone, and welcome to the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast, where entrepreneurs help entrepreneurs grow faster, better, and stronger in the green industry. From leadership to sales to recruiting and operational excellence, we cover the topics holding entrepreneurs back and share how to get past those bottlenecks with the best in the industry. I'm your host, Rob Murray, co founder and CEO of Intrigue, a digital marketing company focused on helping landscape companies grow. So sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast. Today, I have a very cool guest, Ross Peterson. Thank you for joining us today, Ross.
Thanks, Rob.
Um, Co-founder, owner of a couple of businesses through the times, but currently with Little Dumps and Bulk Delivery Pro, which we're going to get into some context. But I got to say, how did you go from running a skate park association to helping the green industry essentially change the way they help people buy and get bulk everything from a supply yard?
Yeah, no, it's funny that I'm trying to answer that question to like my peer group too. They're all like, what are you doing? But yeah, I grew up really being interested in sideways sports. I mean, just spent a lot of time doing those things. And then as I sort of got older, I guess, and was always interested in web development. I have an art degree. Like I was always felt like a creative person, and it came there came a time where after building freelance websites for 20 some years, including those for skate park associations or you know Fortune 500 companies. I mean, I had a lot of different types of websites I got the opportunity to work on, and they were really rewarding. But I found myself like, I don't feel like I'm solving a problem that I really want to like hang my hat on. It was a lot
Mhm.
of just building websites. It's a great job. It's just not like, I didn't know if I could tell my kids like I built 2,000 websites in my life. That's what I did, or or I guess worse than that, a lot of that work is gone, right? Like
Right.
just disappears after a few years. Like you change a website and like something that took you
That's it.
12 months to build is like your life is just poof.
Gone. It's gone forever.
It's gone forever. So I was like hung up on what was going to be my next chapter and looking for something I could really sink my teeth into. That's when a friend, acquaintance, and a guy that I had done some landscaping work with, I'd hired him for landscaping work. He came to me and said, uh, I've got this problem where my guys, we're always being asked to bring more material to a job that we did last year or that we finished, and they just need a little bit more, or a friend or something. Like I've got dump trucks, I've got a crew, but I can't make it pencil for me to take a guy off a job, go pick up a yard of topsoil, go take it to a customer, figure out the invoicing, figure out when they were going to want it, where did they want it dumped, but I know there's a market for it. What do you think? And I was like, God, I've had that problem. I'd hired him for that problem.
Right.
And I was like, that one's actually sounds pretty interesting, as far as a problem to solve. It checked a couple boxes for me that it was a unique web-based solution. And then it was also in the real world. It was like you'd see the results that day, perhaps. And um, so we talked and we're like, let's just see if we can spin up a little website. And so I did, and we took one of his trucks and put some stickers, like magnets on the side of it, and just
Yeah.
and it was all Doug's idea. And so Doug's co-founder of all this as well. But he's like, let's just call it something like Little Dumps. And so like
Itself is
Googling the
amazing.
name, like that name exists. Nobody has that domain. Like, of course, that's exactly what we'll call it. So we bought the domain. Yeah, like I said, put the stickers on the truck, and then just passed out some business cards, to like places, nurseries, and people around town just to see if we could get some traction. And it kind of started to take off right away, that people were genuinely interested in getting small amounts of materials delivered to their house. Um, so we finished out that season, and then each year we would grow, and we started buying a truck, and then we bought another truck. And initially the model was just we wanted to have just a website and a truck. We didn't want to stock any materials. We'd buy everything, mark it up, and deliver it. And that model totally works. It's in many ways very, like very entrepreneurial, right? You can just like park the truck at home, get up in the morning, see what orders came in, go pick up the stuff, take it. What
Yeah.
we ran into was that we started, we would take an order for something and then go to the vendor and they would be out. They had that material the day before, they don't have it today. And so trying to coordinate those things, just there were just logistical challenges. We'd see like, oh, that would be a cool product that we could sell, but where would we aren't going to ask this vendor to stock this for us.
Right.
So we took, so this is a blurry timeline of like 5 or 6 years here, but we eventually went and rented some land and started stocking our own materials. And so then another truck. And then so now we have this fleet of trucks and now a bigger truck. And so, yeah, that whole business was growing and it outpaced what I had built with this crummy little off the shelf website.
Mhm.
So, then COVID hit and it was like, well, if this is a problem that we have, let's just double down on building out a really robust software solution for this problem. And if no one ever buys it, at least it'll work really well for us, but maybe somebody else would be interested in using this.
Right.
And that's really the genesis of what we're selling now or promoting and using daily in Bulk Delivery Pro is the platform that we built for ourselves with Little Dumps, but then built it with it in mind that others could use the same thing. And so once we'd started doing that or taking that leap, then problems that other people had that we don't have started getting solved with the software. And that is turns out exactly what I want to be doing with my days professionally, like listening to a real world problem and then being able to solve it in some cases very quickly in software and then see that solution implemented within a few weeks. And, I mean, it's so fun, to like,
And to see a physical world impact
yeah,
so quickly.
so quickly. Yeah. So that
Super
was
cool.
what, just for my own sake, that's what had been looking for. And it just kind of fell in my lap. Yeah.
Which is amazing. And thanks for the summary and for the people that are listening, to help them orient themselves to like who they're speaking to. But you're, now in a position where you're helping people all across North America, solve very similar problems, essentially, moving dirt efficiently to many places for many people, dirt and others, stuff, aggregate, whatever.
Yeah.
So if we segue that into the theme of the podcast, which is around this idea of like, what's the primary growth constraint holding entrepreneurs back in the green industry? What do you take from that experience then to apply
Yeah.
to a question like that?
Well,
Stranger?
and to be clear, I'm not I feel like still a newcomer to the green industry. Like whenever we're at these trade shows or whatever, I feel like not an imposter, but I don't feel like I've got this 30-year, everybody in those places is like, oh, they've seen it all, and so I feel like I'm still trying to learn a lot about um, big picture problems in the green industry. But one that was immediately obvious to me, when Doug first asked about this was like, it didn't seem like many businesses were quite as savvy on like I'm fumbling with my words because I don't want
Call a
anybody
spade a
to feel
spade. It's all good,
badly,
man.
but they just don't have the tech skills haven't made their way to this industry as much as they have in others. And so not as
That
many.
was a very well said point.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. It's not for lack of interest, I'm sure. It's kind of an industry that tech bros haven't gotten as involved in, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
No, it's true. Well, even the professionalism of the entire industry has increased dramatically in the last 10 years,
Yeah, yeah. And
let
again,
alone
it's
the
not a
technology
criticism.
that comes along with it, because it takes a professional business mind to look at how to create more efficiencies inside the organization that they're working in or industry they're a part of. And that's just increased dramatically in the last, say, let's say 5, 10 years. And in behind that's probably, and we're starting to see them started to look at tech a lot more seriously.
Yeah. And it's probably a part of it is that tech is expanding more to accommodate some of the problems in the green industry. But
100%.
I think it's more, I mean, part of it is an attraction for me to an industry that wasn't overrun with this. That was a big, like, this is awesome. This is sort of like we get to rewind a little in time and then maybe do things better than industries that got we were saturated with tech early on and now they're dealing with legacy stuff, you know.
Right.
Now you get to kind of like take what's been learned elsewhere and apply it here without all this baggage. So, but to answer your question, I guess I think entrepreneurs in this space just need help getting getting their message out and selling online. That's really what we're bringing to the table is the ability to very quickly um, start taking a product you either create or stock or have some interest in and selling it online. I mean, I think that's holding people back from taking the business that's on the corner that's, our potential customers are people with 20 bins of material, or that's one segment of our customer, but they might not even have a website, believe it or not. Like
Oh no, there's a place right around the corner from where I live. They don't have a website. People just
they,
drive. They've been driving by it for decades. They know to go there.
yeah,
Every spring it gets busy. Every fall it's a little bit busy, and then in the
yeah.
summertime they're doing a lot of stuff for like industrial commercial applications.
And it's a great business. They probably all do, like it's been around forever. It's proven. It's whatever. And that like imagine that that's their customer base is the 20% of people that knew about it because they've lived here or lived there for 20 years, right?
Yeah,
There's the other 80% of people that have no idea that place exists at all.
absolutely. And it's really interesting something that you said just a second ago, and I want to just get your take on this. We talk about it a lot when we do our presentations because when at the end of the day, Intrigue's we're a digital marketing company
Yeah.
completely focused on the landscape industry, but marketing can only go so far. If you don't close the deal, you're not growing your revenue. If you're not growing your revenue, you usually don't keep companies like us around. So we do a lot of training with our clients and content around the idea of sales and like helping people close deals. But one of the things that you said, which was really interesting, is that you're helping people sell online. And we always talk about the idea that people hate to be sold to, but love to buy stuff. And it seems like you're almost helping customers buy online because they're not being sold anything. It's so easy, it's frictionless, and you're bringing it to the corner supply company or garden center, which people might not have thought was possible. I think this whole idea of like the online experience is just way more comfortable for someone to purchase than it is to be in a position where they feel like they're being sold something.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this is an important piece that we talk about a lot is um, there are a lot of platforms out there, Ubers, place like tech has found a little niche and then a company has been created to solve that thing, but you're promoting that company. We set out to do kind of the opposite and ask me in 10 years if this was a good idea, but our goal was not to be like, oh, we're going to own bulk delivery in North America under the banner of Bulk Delivery Pro. Our goal was let's build the tools so that somebody can put their mom and pop brand, whatever or however big they are, it doesn't have to be mom and pop, put their brand on it and sell to their existing customer base and this whole new batch of people that will find them in their areas. I mean, these businesses are hyper local. They're like there's a gravel pit and they sell gravel, or there's a
Yeah.
nursery center that's been around for 60 years and it's a third generation nursery or whatever. We're not going to we had no interest in coming in and saying, "Hey, now you know what you should do? Send all your business to this platform."
Right.
Like, why would they do that? Why would that is doesn't even sound like I would never want to be part of something like that that wants to put these places out of business, or that would be the only way they could succeed is if those businesses didn't exist. Let's build something that makes them more profitable, right? That's the goal.
Yeah, and I mean it's gonna work seamlessly. I mean, we're working with a couple of clients that are using the platform or just starting to, and they're just so pumped about it. And so I think it's neat how you take a real world problem that you had, spin up a, minimum viable product website that solves the problem. It scales to a point where the site doesn't support it anymore. And now you build a more robust solution that you can use. And then maybe somebody else uses it. Now here we are. A lot of people are starting to use it. What I think is really interesting in that whole story though, is like people understanding how powerful web can be
Yes.
for problem solving. And, you said a little bit earlier too, like a lot of people online in the green space are using a lot of brochure style communication on the web. And so, like, what else can people do to solve problems? And one of the things I'd be interested in getting from your brain today is when you encounter a real world problem. So, in this case, with little dumps, how do you think about it from like a web solution point of view?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're pushing through a few of those things right now. Like well, one example, we recently pushed out an update that was I mean, this is I'll probably people will probably be annoyed when they hear this, some people, but we feel like um probably always sell you should almost always sell materials by the yard, right? I mean, or by a volume measurement, I should say. Like
Yeah, cubic something.
cubic something, like very few customers are like, oh, I'm going to redo my driveway. I'm really excited about getting 2 tons of it. Like the weight of it couldn't matter less, in my opinion, unless you're in the industry and you know there's a 1.4 conversion factor between tons and yards in that product. I mean, it doesn't, the weight is so tied to trucking and industry,
Yeah,
right?
it's got nothing to do with my use. Like, I don't care how much it weighs on
No,
my
not at
lawn.
the consumer level at
Yeah,
all. And yet the industry's kind of hung up on selling by the ton. It's what they've always done. And so so we built Little Dumps being like, we're never going to sell by the ton. And we're always going to, we're going to do the math for somebody so that what they get is one price, and that includes the delivery, and it's either worth it for them or it's not. But they don't have to do math. They don't have to figure out like, oh, it's this much for the material, and then we have a delivery fee of this plus 20 cents per mile after this. Like there was some crazy stuff out there
yeah.
per kilometer. But anyway,
No, no, you're good. It's all good. It's all good.
my point, I guess, is that there are cases where it makes sense to sell by the ton. And we just didn't build the platform for it.
Right.
So, but we didn't initially build it. We thought about it and we built in the structure behind it to support it, but we never exposed it. 3 weeks ago, we are like, we need to do this. We need to like let people sell by the ton if they want, largely because some people are selling by a bag of material and they sell a 1.5 cubic foot bag, or they sell a 50-pound bag. When you get into those smaller units, consumers do kind of know what it is. So anyway, my whole point here is we we had lots of discussions and then we built that piece out. We don't use it at Little Dumps. We never would have built that if it was just solving our problem. So, like then it led to like, well, what do they use in Australia? What are Canadians? What's the difference between a metric ton and an imperial ton? And so those types of problems I genuinely enjoy because it's like, again, something that's in the real world that we get to solve. And now one of our customers has built everything out. They're really interested in selling by the ton. That's just how they do it. They've got a scale. That's what they want to do. But now the software fully supports it. And so,
That's
um,
cool. So,
yeah,
so
I don't know if I answered
when, well, I think, there was one interesting part in there that I wanted to just grab onto for a quick second, which is around the idea of widening your perspective. So you have this problem, and you're like, well, what do they do in Australia? Like that.
that.
That isn't necessarily someone's intuitive thought process, right? To, should we do tons or not? Like, what do they do in Australia? Like, that's just an interesting thought perspective. And so I'm curious, people that are
Yeah.
listening right now, how many of them would go look at landscape websites in Australia to see if they're doing anything differently?
Yeah. Just like, is it the same? And yeah.
And was it the same or was it different? Like, do you
It's
remember
largely the
researching?
same. Yeah, largely the same in Australia, but there is like the metric ton is used. What I find interesting, I think, is Canadians often, I mean, probably just by nature of being so close to the US, but there's lots of mixing and matching of units of measure across the board. So,
Oh,
which
dude, we're in
is
pounds
crazy.
and feet
Yeah.
and our weight and our height and everything we measure is in centimeters and meters. And then we've got 17-inch rims or 19-inch rims on
Yeah.
bikes
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
23-inch. Like, I don't get it.
It's all over the place. So the system now fully supports that, and that was a big push. And we also recognize that a lot of these businesses, probably the one you talked about on the corner, sell to a lot of contractors. And that hasn't been the business model we created with Little Dumps. We wanted to sell directly to mostly consumers. And so we never really considered what contractor customers might need. And so that's the next big thing that we're deep into now is building out tools so that contractors, we can reduce the friction for contractors that want to place orders with the people who are using Bulk Delivery Pro. So contractors can log in, assign an order to a job that they would pre-enter, and then they can prepay for it or add it to their account or whatever, and then send one of their employees in to pick up the material. And there's no concern about whether the right material was purchased for that job or who paid for it or whatever. We interviewed a dozen of our customers around the country last year and throughout the spring of this year in an effort to make sure we didn't miss a piece here, because we heard over and over and over that there's lots of confusion when customers that are contractors come in or send their guys in or dealing with billing, that they would welcome a better way to do it. And so I guess that might be a better answer for your question. Like
Well,
how,
and one of the cool things I think you said there that a lot of people don't necessarily understand, and it would be great to just expand on it, was the idea of take the friction out of the process. So
yeah,
you look at a contractor trying to get stuff to a customer's house. That customer is essentially a shared customer between the person selling said stuff and the contractor working with said stuff. And there's no way for me to coordinate either getting it delivered there or picked up there from the customer with me doing it on their behalf. That sounds, even just with a description, kind of complicated and convoluted, let alone in the actual practical execution of said ideas without having to call people and like take pictures of IDs to show people who's what and addresses. So it sounds like just that experience has friction in it. And so I'm
yeah,
just curious from your perspective, like when you look for a friction point in a, a purchase process or in a business, what do you consider friction? And then if you're sharing with the audience, like what kind of things should they be looking for when to find friction, then not only to find it, but to get rid of it?
yeah, no, that's a great question. I would say for me, and I imagine others would, I mean, there's lots of places for friction, but the biggest one for me is just time. Like, where do you just stumble and like it ends up taking more time than it feels like it should to accomplish the task, you know? So contractor needs 2 yards of topsoil back to this job.
Simple.
He or she, it seems simple. He
Right.
or she needs to get, if they don't go do it themselves, which is unlikely, that they're going to, and ask an employee to go get it, the 2 yards of topsoil. And now still seems like it should be simple, but you might end up with a language barrier. You might end up with three different kinds of topsoil when they get there. All that employee knew was topsoil. And then when they got there, there's a 50-50 mix and a three-way and a garden mix. What did, and then now he's trying to call back to his contractor boss or his or her contractor
But he's
boss,
talking to a customer.
but he's talking to a customer, so she misses the call, whatever. But then they're holding up the line at the landscape supply yard because they don't know what to load. But the loader's waiting, like all of a sudden, three people lost 15 to 20 minutes over a transaction that best case netted somebody, you know, it didn't deserve an hour and a half of human time,
Yeah.
when it was all said and done. And so where did that fall apart? Well, it fell apart because that contractor didn't really know what was available. If they did, and then once they knew what they wanted, they could have purchased it and had it waiting. Then the
Mhm.
employee just has to show up, pick it up, and bring it back, right? And there's no transaction that even needs to happen because it's already paid for. So
Yeah.
that employee just has to drive in, show that they've who they are, get loaded, and they're back. I mean, you just save, I don't know how
Well,
much you can save,
literally
but
simple.
multiply that by, I mean, these places have trucks coming in and out all day long, and the guys and gals get out and then they stand in line and then they stand by the water cooler and then whatever. Like it's just a lot of time gets lost.
Mhm.
Somebody's paying for that time. But
That's cool perspective, right? So it's like as an owner, entrepreneur of an organization, it actually doesn't even matter what industry you're in. If there's things taking too much time than you think, that's a good opportunity for a friction point. Um, and I think one of the things, like in our world anyway, is that you listen to these folks with marketing leads and sales, and it's like somebody submits a form at like 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Someone gets back to them at 10 a.m. on Thursday because they missed the day. They were busy the Wednesday. And they email them back, and then they email them back. Oh no, I can't talk until Friday, or no, Saturday. Oh well, we don't work on Saturday. How about next two? Oh my God,
it's
that's
painful. You
friction.
just
That's
lost
friction if there isn't
momentum.
friction.
Yeah, like I think the biggest one there is like somebody was motivated enough to fill out that form. They're like excited, and then that excitement likely wanes over time if it's
by
not.
by about 85% in 48 hours.
Yeah, perfect. The same is true when we're ready to buy something, right? Like you're ready to work on your yard. Like I want to work on my garden. I'm going to build a container garden, and then now I mean I don't want to bore everyone with what usually happens, but it's multi steps and four different people touch it, and it's painful, and like to the point where like when it finally gets to your house, I mean, part of the fun is gone. Like, and we regularly get complimented by people being like, decided I want to build a garden. I hopped on your website, I ordered it. It just so happened you still had a delivery slot that day, and I was filling up my garden box that night. Like,
Yeah,
like that doesn't always happen, but it has happened a lot. And
but it
it
can happen is the
can
kicker.
happen. And the only persons that were involved in that with the system we built was the customer who wanted the soil. They placed the order went through the system, and the next person to touch that was the person loading the material into the truck to bring it to them.
Mhm.
Right? Like I didn't need an admin person in the middle to say, hey, an order came in, write it down, which is what most people still do, and then put it on a piece of paper and then hand it to somebody else who then has to read the hand, we can go on and on. But my point being like there's a lot of you can capitalize on momentum in lots of industries, and that's one of the things we've tried to do, and it sounds like one of the things maybe you guys are noting of value in the moment after somebody filled out that form, how quickly can you get back to them, how can you reduce that friction?
Yeah, even at the very least, have them book a call.
Yeah,
Like just pick a slot where they can pick a call that they want to have.
yeah, precisely. Yeah.
And how do we take the friction out? And then, I mean, there's so many points of friction when it comes to the buying and selling process for folks in the green industry. And I mean, I think one of the ones that you've talked about, because there's logistics and delivery too, and that's never simple, right? To make sure you're not losing money as you deliver stuff. Um, but now as you see people adopting the platform and more leaders are using it, like when you're talking to customers, do you see their eyes starting to light up a little bit in terms of like how technology can actually impact their business?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I mean, forward thinking folks, for sure. Like one of we've at trade shows discussed a lot about like what should be our hook? Like how do you get somebody's attention without um being off-putting? Because they're at a trade show to get sold to, but still nobody really wants to be approached. Even though they're walking by your booth, it's like you kind of have to find a way to engage with somebody. So we started saying, like, hey, do you have a dump truck? Hey, do you have a dump truck? And they many times would be like, well, yeah, and then like, well, how much time does it sit? Like, is it sitting around a lot or is it being driven all? And they're like, well, yeah, a lot of times dump trucks are sitting around.
Yeah.
What if you could make it not sit around and make money when it's driving? Like, what do you think? And that started to kind of resonate with people. Like, well, actually, you're right. I got this $50,000, $80,000 dump truck that's just sitting there. Like,
Yeah.
what if you could put a guy in it and start moving more material more often? Like, what if? Like stuff like that starts to, like those are the conversations I love once you can kind of see somebody's like, oh, well, yeah, actually, what if, you
I
know?
could give it a shot. And so then you mentioned before that there's a couple different customer segments that you have. So like who is it that this is really designed for?
Yeah, well, thanks. We've identified 4 or 5, and keep trying to find more, because it seems like there are some smaller ones that we haven't really like fully fleshed out. But nursery centers, obviously anybody that has a nursery that sells nurseries things, trees, bushes, plants, they typically have some bulk materials in the back that they sell, and they typically do some deliveries. They're a great fit. Quarries, people who are regularly moving big high volumes of rock and gravel and sand products, they're a great fit as well. Um, we love the entrepreneurs, even though, they're not, they're building their businesses, so they're not bigger customers, but we love trying to support them, and working to support them, where it's a guy that has or gal that has a truck, and they're just like, you know what, I'm going to spin this up on the side. I'm not going to stock any materials. I'm just going to be in my town. I'm going to be the person people can rely on to take this, and I'm going to use the platform to do so. And those ones are,
That's super cool.
it's super cool. Yeah. It's awesome. That's one of my, I mean, we love them all, of course, but those are the ones that have the like brightest eyes when we start, when they realize it, they're
That's
hungry.
super cool.
Yeah. Um, and then manufacturers, compost manufacturers, people that previously they've got a great product and but they're trying to figure out how to move more of it. Maybe
So for
they,
the sake of today, because there ain't any composters listening to us, as much as I wish there were,
yeah.
the nurseries and the garden centers probably the most prevalent audience listening to this.
Hmm.
So what would you say to I would think it's very similar business model. The nursery and the garden center are pretty much like brother sister type
Yeah.
relationship in the way that their model works.
Yeah.
So what is the biggest problem they're having with all this stuff when they start using you and they're just like, oh my God, thank goodness. And why didn't we start using it a year ago?
Well, I think everybody working in one of those places wears a lot of hats. It's pretty tricky to get, like, they could be like troubleshooting like a barcode scanning issue in 1 second, and then like explaining why this tree didn't make it through the winter in the next second. Like everybody's that we've met in those places wears a lot of hats.
Right.
And and the concept of like then somebody showing up, they waited in line they checked out with their 4 plants, and they'd like to have some topsoil delivered, like that process of then scheduling that delivery and coordinating all those details is really tricky, especially when you've got a line of people behind you because it's a retail setting. So we've got folks that have set up like a tablet kiosk, and they're like, okay, perfect, pop over here, you can go ahead and schedule your delivery, do all that right
Anytime
here,
you want, just do it by
anytime you want,
yourself. Yeah.
right
Yeah.
here. And teaching them that, one, like, we're going to take care of you right now. It's going to get on the books, but also, um, in the future, you can just hop on and do this stuff from your phone or your computer at home. You don't
Yeah.
have to drive to the nursery to schedule this, which seems like what a lot of people consumers have been, that are older, that don't know, not necessarily that age, but like who have done it before. That's been the only way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, at the place where I'm at, it's definitively the case. Like I definitely like I have to call. They're never picking up the phone, so I have to go there
You
and
drive
then
down. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, with my trailer. Hopefully they can put some stuff in my trailer.
Yep. And
But they
then,
can deliver it if they're not busy.
they're pulling a guy, gal out of an office to go get in the loader in some cases to go get it loaded, because there's not enough demand for that material to leave somebody in the loader all day.
Right. But then
So
you
there's
get it
just a
online,
lot
make
of,
it easy.
again, kind of lost time. But if that stuff comes in, we added a feature to where you can prepay for pickup orders. So now places that have implemented it, the customer on their way to the nursery says like, oh, I'm going to buy 3 yards topsoil. It's prepaid, whatever. They just show up at the gate. Some people have gone so far as to put like a phone number and a QR code on that part of the business. Like they steer traffic into the business and say, like, if you've got a prepaid pickup order for bulk, go here. And then somebody's just kind of watching that spot. And then they see somebody pull in, they just run out and get the loader. What do they need? Fill them up, go. Or they have a cell phone number or a phone number and just like, hey, if you're sitting here and you don't see the loader, call this number. And then the person will run out and get you loaded. And they didn't ever have to get out of their car and come in and go through the whole thing you're describing. So
It's epic.
yeah, that's the stuff like that has been so fun, especially when you go visit and on site of like somebody that's implemented it and just watch it happening. Like we're part of like this problem getting solved. This is so fun. Yeah.
And then changing the way humans interact with these companies, like in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
very
Yeah.
significant
And
way.
their reviews, people like are like, this was awesome. We had a really good experience with their new website. They don't talk about us. They're talking about that nursery center's website being
Yeah.
so good. And they get all the credit. So it's like awesome. They should get the credit for that. Yeah.
Which is super cool too. So like, have you guys decided are you going to do like a community thing, bring people together for an event once a year? Has that started to come across the table at all?
Yeah, we found that like this bulk part, this little sub niche of green industry doesn't really have a place for people to gather. So we're
Hmm.
kind of, I mean, we have lots of ideas, everything from just like a monthly Zoom call to like an actual get together. So everything's starting to gel, and anybody's listening who wants to chime in on what they'd prefer, we're all ears. But if nothing else, yeah, just like maybe a standing time where we get together once a month, once every
Well, and
couple.
just even to just, I mean, as much as it's like insignificant in those random examples about someone using a QR code versus a phone number and a pickup and prepaid, and there's just like, and then like getting them to think together about what could be possible in terms of feature requests. Like, what are you guys working on right now for this group for something for 2025? Like,
Yeah, the contractor piece is huge. That's the all of the
that's the main focus. That's super
that's the
cool.
big focus right now. Yeah, just making sure that people who've invested in Bulk Delivery Pro can have that their contractors, who are oftentimes a big part of their business, are more, you're better supported by the software. So it was really initially built more of like to support their direct to consumer sales.
Yeah.
So it's just a different beast when it comes to the contractor piece.
And well, I'm going back to what you said at the very beginning too, which is going to help them be more profitable more significantly if you're doing it for the contractor versus the homeowner in most regard.
Yeah, and get those contractors. I mean, a lot of times contractors will say, "Well, I'm maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, contractors that are listening, but like, I need topsoil. Like, who's the closest one? I don't care. I'm just gonna go get topsoil." But like, if they've had a really good experience with this one place and they now have all the reporting for all their jobs there, pretty good chance they're gonna pick that spot to keep going back
Well,
to.
especially if it's going to get delivered.
Yeah, well, certainly if it's going to get delivered, but even if it's not, even if they're
Yeah.
mixing and matching, right? Like sometimes they send an employee to pick it up and sometimes they would rather have that delivered. They're going to be able to keep all that aggregated so that they know like the Johnson job, we brought them 42 and a half yards of topsoil and it's all right here. I don't have all these scraps of handwritten notes in my truck.
Yeah, those work really well in the glove compartment or in the
Yeah,
empty coffee
the
cup.
like then they're like we want to do a skit that's like the contractors, every contractor truck you open up with all the invoices that fall out,
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah, that's
that's
definitively
just
standard.
every day, with for every contractor pretty much. Yeah.
So, in your journey over the years, in terms of learning how to like, solve problems in the real world using web solutions, founding a business, being owner of two companies, has there been a resource like a speaker or an author or somebody that you followed that kind of like hit you over the head and was like aha moments?
Oh boy, I wish I had one that I could be like, this is my person or my people. No, I don't really think I mean, I certainly got mentored people that I respect and look forward to that coffee 3 times a year or something that,
Well, even that though, a mentor. I mean, a lot of people like I think a lot of people don't think about an author as a mentor, and like as much as I've never met John C. Maxwell. I would consider him a leadership mentor for me because I've read
Mm.
all of his resources, follow his stuff a little bit, and it's helped me understand myself a lot better. But if there's a
Yeah.
real world mentor of somebody, then the experience they've had, and then share the impact it's had on you, because real world mentorship is massively impactful. And I think a lot of people underestimate how impactful it can be. Like, who's that for
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, there's a fellow in town here. His name is Glenn Kreisel. He's built and exited from a number of businesses. Not that exiting is the goal, but the he just has gone through, or not always the goal. Um, he's just gone through that process of building up a tech company and selling it, and then building one. I mean, I can't believe the resiliency that it takes for somebody to do that in like three times in his life or more, three that I know of, to like it's it's just take requires so much energy, that it's fun to get together with him, for me anyway, and just chat, and just he'll just say, well, where you at? What are you running up against? And just even if he doesn't have an answer necessarily, it's just like, there's few people that you rub shoulders with or cross paths with that have experienced some of those challenges, so like
And a lot of times it's hard to think through problems.
therapy, I
Sometimes you have to
guess.
talk. Well, you got to talk through problems.
Yeah.
I think especially for external processors, and most entrepreneurs are, not to say to, generalize, but and it can be lonely at the top. I mean, mentorship often overlooked and like massively significant for myself included. But anybody I know that's had a mentorship relationship, even if it's informal, massively impactful.
Yeah, and I guess not to, this is cheesy, but when it first came out, and even still, I've always loved how I built the podcast, just like listening to,
Oh, so good.
just like what was somebody's story, what was the biggest, just you get it, all of it like bundled up into an hour, and like love that stuff. So
Especially stuff that you're so familiar with. You're like, how the heck did that come to be? And then you hear the craziness story. And you know what? The common theme in all this and all the entrepreneurs listening to it, it's never easy.
yeah,
There's
yeah,
a
where there
common
was
thread.
like
And
or a moment like it almost didn't work at all,
yeah,
and
yeah.
did, or
Like the
whatever.
loans are going to be called, or the
Yeah.
shareholders are going to sue me or something.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, those are I feel like I used to have more time to listen to that stuff. I need to make more time. Yeah.
Yeah. What is it? If you don't take more time, you can't have more time.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
if someone wants to get a hold of you, what's the best way to do it?
Oh, thanks. Our website, bulkdelivery.pro, and then the contact form there would certainly make its way to me. And yeah, we really do want to hear from people when they are even considering it, but like, this would be cool, except it doesn't have this, or it doesn't do that. Like, no promises we're going to add it, obviously, but we're always trying to do our best to make sure that we didn't accidentally leave out something that somebody else brings to our attention. Like, we built it for us, so it really solves all of our problems really well. And now, the guy that sells firewood has a different problem than we do, a little bit different. So
Right.
we're all ears. Yeah, yeah.
That's cool. Well, thanks for doing this, Ross. Really appreciate your time, man.
Oh, Rob, we really appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for including us. Yeah.
Cool. And thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the I Am Landscape Growth Podcast.